Got it. Welcome. I'm Paul Sugarman with the Instant Shakespeare Company, and today we have a special Shaw Project presentation. And the Shaw Project is headed by David Cedar, so over to you, David.
Hello, everyone. I decided for this month of elections, even though the election has passed, to do a couple plays that were around getting the vote. Women's struggle in Britain to get the vote. And the first one is a delightful piece by Shaw called Press Cuttings, which premiered in 1909. It's the first production, I believe. So without any further ado, let's get going on it. I'm going to stop my video. You'll hear me. The forenoon of the 1st of April, 3 years hence. General Mitchener is at his writing table in the War Office, opening letters. On his left is the fireplace with a fire burning. On his right, against the opposite wall, is a standing desk with an official stool, office stool, excuse me. The door is in the wall behind him, halfway between the table and the desk. The table is not quite in the middle of the room. It is nearer to the hearthrug than to the desk. There is a chair at each end of it for persons having business with the general. There is a telephone on the table.
Votes for women!
Votes for women! Votes for women! Votes for women!
Oh. It's only you. Well?
Another one, sir. She's chained herself.
Chained herself? How? To what? We've taken away the railings and everything that a chain can be passed through.
We forgot the door scraper, sir. She laid down on the flags and got the chain through before she started hollering. She's lying there now, and she says that you've got the key to the padlock in a letter in a buff envelope, and that you will see her when you open it.
She's mad. Have the scraper dug up and let her go home with it hanging around her neck.
There's a buff envelope there, sir.
You know, you're all afraid of all these women. No. Well, I'm dashed.
Yes, sir.
What do you mean, yes, sir?
Well, you said you was dashed, sir, and you did look it. If you'll excuse my saying it, sir, you looked it.
This is a letter from the Prime Minister asking me to release the woman with this key if she padlocks herself, and to have us shown up and see her at once.
Don't do it, Governor.
How often have I ordered you not to address me as Governor? Remember that you are a soldier and not a vulgar civilian. Remember also that when a man enters the army, he leaves fear behind him. Now, here's the key. Unlock her, show her up.
Me unlock her? I dursn't. Lord knows what she'll do to me.
Obey your orders instantly, sir, and don't presume to argue. Even if she kills you, it is your duty to die for your country. Right, about face, march!
Votes for women! Votes for women! Votes for women!
Votes for women, votes for women, votes for women, votes for women, vote for children, votes for babies, votes for monkeys.
In you go. The person, sir.
Stop, madam. What are you doing? You must not undress in my presence, I protest. Not even your letter from the Prime Minister would allow you to do such a thing.
My dear Mitchener, I am the Prime Minister.
Good heavens! Balsquith!
Yes, it is indeed Balsquith. Yeah. It has come to this, that the only way that the Prime Minister of England can get from Downing Street to the War Office is by assuming this disguise, shrieking votes for women, and chaining himself to your door scraper. They're at the corner in force. They cheered me. Bella Christina herself was there. She shook my hand and told me to say that I was a vegetarian, as the diet was better in Holloway for vegetarians.
Why didn't you just telephone?
They tapped the telephone. Every switchboard in London is in their hands, or in those of their young men.
Where on earth did you get that dressed? I said, where on earth did you get that dress?
Well, it's certainly not a French dress. Great heavens, no. We're not allowed even to put on our gloves with French chalk. Everything's labeled made in Camberwell.
I don't know where you just jumped to, buddy. Oh, I found it. Go ahead.
Made in Camberwell. Oh dear, we have different versions of the script.
Oh dear. You want to send me yours and I'll use that one? Because if this is going to keep happening, we'll be here all day.
Well, anyway, no, there's very bad news. Sandstone has resigned.
Old Red resigned?
Resigned.
How? I mean, what? It's impossible. The proclamation of martial law last Tuesday made Sandstone virtually dictator in the metropolis, and to resign now is flat desertion.
Yes, my dear Mitchener. I know all that as well as you do. I argued with him until I was black in the face, and he so read about the neck that if I had gone on, he would have burst. He's furious because we have abandoned his plan.
But you accepted it unconditionally.
Yes, that's before I knew what it was. It was unworkable, you know.
I don't know. Why is it unworkable?
I mean the part about drawing a cordon around Westminster at a distance of 2 miles and turning all the women out of it.
A masterpiece of strategy. Let me explain. You see, the suffragettes are a very small body, but when they are numerous enough to be troublesome, even dangerous, when they are all concentrated in one place, say in Parliament Square. But by making a 2-mile radius and pushing them beyond it, you scatter their attack over a circular line 12 miles long. It's a superb piece of tactics. Just what Wellington would have done.
But the women won't go.
Nonsense, they must go.
They won't.
Well, what does Sandstone say?
He says shoot them down.
Of course.
You're not serious.
I'm perfectly serious.
You can't shoot them down. Women, you know.
Yes, you can. So, you know, strange as it may seem to you as a civilian, Balsquith, if you point a rifle at a woman and fire it, she will drop exactly as a man drops.
But suppose your own daughters, Helen or Georgina.
My daughters would not dream of disobeying the proclamation. At least Helen wouldn't.
But the public opinion would never stand it.
No. Georgina, no. She knew she'd be shot if she didn't. That's how the thing would work. Military methods are really the most merciful in the end. You keep sending these misguided women to Holloway and killing them slowly and inhumanely by ruining their health, and it does no good. They go on worse than ever. Shoot a few, promptly, humanely, and there will be an end at once of all the resistance and all the suffering that resistance entails.
But the public opinion, I tell you, would never stand it.
There is no such thing as public opinion.
No such thing as public opinion.
Absolutely no such thing as public opinion. There are certain persons who entertain certain opinions. Well, shoot them down. And when you have shot them down, there are no longer any persons entertaining those opinions alive. Consequently, there is no longer any more of the public opinion that you are so much afraid of. Grasp that fact, my dear Balsquith, and you have grasped the secret of government. Public opinion is mind. Mind is inseparable from matter. Shoot down the matter, and you kill the mind.
Yes, it's all very jolly well for you and old Red. You don't depend on the votes for your places. What do you suppose would happen at the next election?
Have no next election. Bring in a bill at once, repealing all the Reform Acts, investing the government in a properly trained magistracy responsible only to a council of war. It answers perfectly in India. And if anyone objects, shoot them down.
But none of the members of my party would be on the Council of War. Neither should I. Do you expect us to vote for making ourselves nobodies?
You'll have to, sooner or later, or the socialists will make nobodies out of the lot of you by collaring every penny you possess. Do you suppose this damned democracy can be allowed to go on now that the mob is beginning to take it seriously and using its power to lay hands on property? Parliament must abolish itself. The Irish Parliament voted for its own extinction. The English Parliament will do the same if the same means are taken to persuade it.
That would cost a lot of money.
Not money necessarily. Bribe them with titles.
Do you think we dare?
Dare. What is life but daring, man? To dare, and again to dare.
Oh, those women, votes for women. Good heavens, you haven't given orders to fire on them, have you?
No. But it's a sentinel's duty to fire on anyone who persists in attempting to pass without giving the word.
This military business is really awful.
Oh, be calm, Balsquith. These things must happen. They save bloodshed in the long run, believe me. I've seen plenty of it, and I know.
I haven't, and I don't know. I wish those guns didn't make such a devil of a noise. We must adopt maximum silencers for the army rifles if we're going to shoot women. I really couldn't stand hearing it.
What's that? Who's there?
It's only me, Governor. It's all right.
What was that?
Suffragette, sir.
Did the sentry shoot her?
Oh, no, sir. She shot the sentry.
Oh, is that all?
All? A civilian shoots down one of His Majesty's soldiers on duty, and the Prime Minister of England asks, is that all? Have you no regard for the sanctity of human life?
Well, getting shot is what a soldier is for. Besides, he doesn't vote.
Neither do the suffragettes.
Well, their husbands do.
Ah.
Did she kill him?
No, sir. He got a stinger on his trousers, sir, but it didn't penetrate. He lost his temper a bit and put down his gun and clouted her head for her. So she said he was no gentleman. Well, he let her go, thinking she'd had enough, sir.
Clouted her head. These women are making the army as lawless as themselves. Clouted her head, indeed. A purely civil procedure.
Any orders, sir?
No. Yes. No. Yes. Send everybody who took part in this disgraceful scene to the guard room. No. I'll address the men on the subject after lunch. Parade them for that purpose. Full kit. And don't grin at me. Right, about face. March!
Well, and now, Mitchener, will you come to the rescue of the government and take the command that old Red has thrown up?
How can I? You know that the people devoted heart and soul to Sandston. He's only bringing you on the knee, as we say in the army. Could any other living man have persuaded the British nation to accept universal compulsory military service as he did last year? Why, even the church refused exemption. He is supreme, omnipotent.
He was a year ago. But ever since your book of reminiscences went into 2 more editions than his, and the rush for it led to the wrecking of the Times Book Club, you have become, to all intents and purposes, his senior. He lost ground by saying that the wrecking was got up by the booksellers. It showed jealousy, and the public felt it.
But I cracked him up in my book. You see, I could do no less after the handsome way he cracked me up in his. And I can't go back on it now. No, it's no use, Balsquith. You can dictate, he can dictate his terms to you.
Not a bit of it. That affair of the curate.
Oh, damn that curate. I've heard of nothing but that wretched mutineer for a fortnight past. He is not a curate. While he is serving in the army, he is a private soldier and nothing else. I really haven't time to discuss him further. I'm busy now. Good morning.
I'm sorry you take that tone, Mitchener. Since you do take it, let me tell you, frankly, that I think Lieutenant Chubbs Jenkinson showed great want of consideration for the government in giving an unreasonable and unpopular order and bringing compulsory military service into disrepute. When the leader of the Labour Party appealed to me and to the House last year not to throw away all the liberties of Englishmen by accepting compulsory military service without full civil rights for the soldier.
Rot.
I said that no British officer would be capable of abusing his authority with which it was absolutely necessary to invest in.
Quite right.
That carried the House. And the feeling was that the Labour Party were soulless cads.
Well, naturally, so they are.
Oh, and now comes this unmannerly young whelp, Chubbs Jenkinson, the only son of what they call a soda king, and orders a curate to lick his boots. And when the curate punches his head, you first sentence him to be shot, and then make a great show of clemency by committing it to a flogging. What did you expect the curate to do?
His duty was perfectly simple. He should have obeyed the order and then laid his complaint against the officer in proper form. He would have received the fullest satisfaction.
What satisfaction?
Chubbs Jenkinson would have been reprimanded. In fact, he was reprimanded. Besides, the man was thoroughly insubordinate. You cannot deny that the very first thing he did when they took him down after flogging him was to walk up to Chubbs Jenkinson and break his jaw. That showed there was no use flogging him. So now he will get 2 years hard labor and serve him right.
I bet you a guinea he won't even get a week. I bet you another that Chubbs Jenkinson apologizes abjectly. You evidently haven't heard the news.
What news?
It turns out that the curate is well connected. He has 3 aunts in the peerage. Lady Richmond's one of them.
Oh.
And they all adore him. The invitations for 6 garden parties and 14 dances have been cancelled for all the subalterns in Chubb's regiment.
Oh.
No.
I haven't heard a word of this.
Your country needs you, Mitchener.
I don't know where you went.
For your country's sake. Well, he ought to be, I know you think he ought to be flogged. Probably he will be by the other subalterns.
I hope so. Anyway, out he goes. Out of the army. He or I.
Steady, steady. His father has subscribed $1 million to the party funds. We owe him a peerage.
I don't care.
I do. How do you think the parties are kept up? Not by the subscriptions of the local associations, I hope. They don't pay for the gas at the meetings.
Man, can you not be serious? Here we are, face to face with Lady Richmond's grave displeasure, and you talk to me about gas and subscriptions. Her own nephew!
It's unfortunate. He was at Oxford with Bobby Bessborough.
Oh, worse and worse. What shall we do?
Oh, what was that explosion?
You don't know what this means to me, Balsquith. I love the army. I love my country.
It certainly is rather awkward.
What is it? How dare you interrupt us like this?
Didn't you hear the explosion, sir?
Explosion? What explosion? I heard no explosion. I have something more serious to attend to than explosions. Good heavens, Lady Richmond's nephew has been treated like any common labourer, while England is really under the shock of a private comes in and asks me if I heard. Bloody explosion.
By the way, what was the explosion?
Only a sort of bombshell, sir?
Bombshell?
A pasteboard one, sir, full of papers with votes for women in red letters, fired into the yard from the roof of the Alliance office.
Oh, pooh, go away, go away.
Mitchener, you can save the country yet. Put on your full dress uniform and your medals and orders and so forth. Get a guard of honor, something showy, horse guards or something like that. That sort, and call on the old girl.
The old girl?
Well, Lady Richmond. Apologize to her. Ask her leave to accept the command. Tell her that you've made the curate your adjutant or your aide-de-camp or whatever is the proper thing. By the way, what can you make him?
Well, I might make him my chaplain. I didn't see why I shouldn't have a chaplain on my staff. He showed a very proper spirit in punching that young cub's head. I should have done the same myself.
And then I have your promise to take the command if Lady Richmond consents.
On condition that I have a free hand. No nonsense about public opinion or democracy.
As far as possible, I think I may say yes.
That won't do for me. Don't be weak-kneed, Bosworth. You know perfectly well that a real government of this country is and always must be the government of the masses by the classes. You know that democracy is damned nonsense and that no class stands less of it than the working class. You know that we are already discussing the steps that will have to be taken if the country should ever be face to face with the possibility of a Labour majority in Parliament. You know that in that case, we should disenfranchise the mob, and if they made a muss, shoot them. If they made a fuss, shoot them down. You know that if we need public opinion to support us, we can get any quantity of it manufactured in our papers by the poor devils of journalists who will sell their souls for 5 shillings. You know this.
Stop, I say, I don't know. That is the difference between your job and mine, Michener. After 20 years in the army, a man thinks he knows everything. After 20 months in the cabinet, he knows nothing.
We learn from history.
We learn from history that men never learn anything from history. Oh, that's not my own. It's Hegel.
Who's Hegel?
Dead, the German philosopher.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, confound it. That reminds me. The Germans have laid down 4 more dreadnoughts.
Then you must lay down 12.
Oh, yes, it's easy to say that. But think of what they'll cost.
Think of what it would cost to be invaded by Germany and forced to pay an indemnity of 500 millions.
But you said that if you got compulsory military service, there would be an end of the danger of invasion.
On the contrary, my dear fellow, it increases the danger tenfold because it increases German jealousy of our military supremacy.
After all, why should the Germans invade us?
Why shouldn't they? What else is their army to do? What else are they building a navy for?
Well, we never think of invading Germany.
Yes, we do. I have thought of nothing else for the last 10 years. Say what you will, Bosworth, the Germans have never recognized, and until they get a stern lesson, never will recognize the plain fact that the interests of the British Empire are paramount, and that the command of the sea belongs by nature to England.
If they won't recognize it, what can we do?
Shoot them down.
I can't shoot them down.
Yes, you can. You just don't realize it. If you fire a rifle into a German, he drops just as surely as a rabbit does.
But dash it, man, a rabbit hasn't got a rifle and a German has. Suppose he shoots you down.
Excuse me, Bosworth, but that consideration is what we call cowardice in the army. A soldier always assumes that he is going to shoot, not to be shot.
Oh, come. I like to hear how you military people talking of cowardice. Why, you spend your lives in an ecstasy of terror of imaginary invasions. I don't believe you ever go to bed without looking under it for a burglar.
A very sensible precaution, Bosworth. I always take it, and in consequence, I've never been burgled.
Neither have I. Anyhow, don't you taunt me with cowardice. I never look under my bed for a burglar. I'm not always looking under the nation's bed for an invader. And if it comes to fighting, I'm quite willing to fight without being 3-1.
These are the romantic ravings of a jingo civilian, Bosworth. At least you'll not deny that the absolute command of the sea is essential to our security.
The absolute command of the sea is essential to the security of the Principality of Monaco, but Monaco isn't going to get it.
And consequently, Monaco enjoys no security. What a frightful thing. How do the inhabitants sleep with the possibility of invasion, bombardment, continually present in their minds? Would you have our English slumbers broken in the same way? Are we also to live without security?
Yes, there's no such thing as security in the world, and there never can be, so long as men are mortal. England will be secure when England is dead, just as the streets of London will be safe when there's no longer a man on her streets to be run over or a vehicle to run over him. When you military chaps ask for security, you're crying for the moon.
Let me tell you, Bosworth, that in these days of aeroplanes and Zeppelin airships, the question of the moon is becoming one of the greatest importance. It will be reached at no very distant date. Now, can you, as an Englishman, tamely contemplate the possibility of having to live under a German moon? The British flag must be planted there at all hazards.
My dear Mitchener, the moon is outside practical politics. I'd swap it for a coaling station tomorrow with Germany or any other power sufficiently military in its way of thinking to attach any importance to it.
You are the friend of every country but your own.
Say nobody's enemy but my own. It sounds better. You really needn't be so horribly afraid of the other countries. They're all in the same fix as we are. I'm much more interested in the death rate in Lambeth than in the German fleet.
You dare and say that in Lambeth?
I'll say it the day after you publish your scheme for invading Germany and repealing all the Reform Acts.
Now, what do you want?
I don't want anything, Governor, thank you. The Secretary and President of the Anti-Suffragette League say they had an appointment with the Prime Minister and that they've been sent on here from Downing Street.
Ah, quite right. I forgot them. Would you mind my seeing them here? I find extraordinarily grateful. I feel extraordinarily grateful to these people for standing by us and facing the suffragettes, especially as they are naturally the gentler and timider sort of women.
Oh.
Did you say anything?
No, sir.
Did you catch their name?
Oh, yes, sir. The president is Lady Corinthia Fanshawe, and the secretary is Mrs. Banger.
Mrs. what?
Mrs. Banger.
Curiously, quite that quiet people always seem to have some such violent names.
Not much quiet about her, sir.
Attention! Speak when you're spoken to and hold your tongue when you're not. Right, about face, march! Now that's the way to keep these chaps up to the mark. Back again? What do you mean by this mutiny?
What am I to say to the ladies, sir?
You don't mind my seeing them somewhere, do you?
Not at all. Bring them in here to see me when you bring them to see me when you've done with them. I understand that Lady Corinthia is a very fascinating woman. Who is she, by the way?
Daughter of Lord Broadstairs, the automatic turbine man. Gave $250,000 to the party funds. She's musical and romantic and all that. Don't hunt, hates politics, stops in town all the year round. One never sees her except at the opera and at musical at homes and so forth.
What a life. Still, if she wants to see me, I don't mind. But where are the ladies?
In number 17, sir.
Show Mr. Bosquith there and send Mrs. Farrell here.
Mrs. Farrell! This way, sir.
Mrs. Farrell, I have a very important visit to pay. I shall want my full dress uniform and all my medals and orders and my presentation sword. There was a time when the British Army contained men capable of discharging these duties for their commanding officer. Those days are over. Their compulsory enlisted soldier runs to a woman for everything. I am therefore reluctantly obliged to trouble you.
Your medals and orders and the crooked sword with the ivory handle and your full dress uniform is in the waxworks in the Chamber of Military Glory over in that place they used to call the banqueting hall. I told you you'd be sorry for sending them away, and you told me to mind me own business. Are you wiser now?
I am. I had not at that time discovered that you were the only person in the whole military establishment of this capital who could be trusted to remember where anything was, or to understand an order and obey it.
It is no good flattering me. I'm too old.
Not at all, Mrs. Farrell. Now, how is your daughter?
Which daughter?
The one who's made such a gratifying success in the music halls.
Oh, there's no music halls nowadays. They're variety theatres. She got an offer of marriage from a young duke.
Is it possible? What did you do?
They told his mother on him.
What did she say?
Oh, she was pleased as punch. Very good, she says. He's got somebody that'll be able to keep him when the super tax is put up to 20 shillings in the pound.
But your daughter herself, what did she say?
Accepted him, of course. What else would a young fool like her do? He introduced her to the poet laureate, thinking she'd inspire him.
Did she?
Faith, I don't know. All I know is she walked up to him as bold as brass and said, "Write me a sketch, dear." After all the trouble I took with that child's manners, she has no more notion how to behave herself than a pig. You'll have to wear General Sandstone's uniform. It's the only one in the place because he won't lend it to the shows.
Sandstone's clothes won't fit me.
Then you'll have to fit them. Why shouldn't they fit you as well as they fitted General Blake at the Mansion House?
They didn't fit him. He looked a frightful guy.
Well, you must do the best you can with them. You can't exhibit your clothes and wear them too.
And the public thinks the lot of a commanding officer is a happy one. Oh, if only they could see the seamy side of it.
Oh, if they could only see the seamy side of General Sandstone's uniform, where his flask rubs against the buckle of his braces, they'll tell him he ought to get a new one, let alone the way he swears at me.
When a man has risked his life on 8 battlefields, Mrs. Farrell, he has given sufficient proof of his self-control to be excused a little strong language.
Well, would you put up with bad language from me because I've risked my life 8 times in childbed?
My dear Mrs. Farrell, you surely would not compare a risk of that harmless domestic kind to the fearful risks of the battlefield?
I wouldn't compare risks run to bear living people into the world to risks run to blow them out of it. A mother's risk is duty. A soldier's nothing but devilment.
Let me tell you, Mrs. Farrell, that if the men did not fight, the women would have to fight themselves. We'll spare you that at all events.
You can't help yourselves. If 3/4 of you was killed, we could replace you with the help of the other quarter. If 3/4 of us was killed, how many people would there be in England in another generation? If it wasn't for that, a man had put the fighting on us, just as they put all the other drudgery. What would you do if we was all killed? Would you go to bed and have twins?
Really, Mrs. Farrell, you must discuss these questions with a medical man. You make me blush positively.
Good job, too. If I could have made Farrell blush, I wouldn't have had to risk my life too often. You and your risks and your bravery and your self-control, indeed. Why don't you control yourself, I says to Farrell. It's again me religion, he says.
Mrs. Farrell, you're a woman of a very powerful mind. I'm not qualified to argue these delicate matters with you. I ask you to spare me and to be good enough to take these clothes to Mr. Balsquith when the ladies leave.
Lady Corinthia Fanshawe and Mrs. Banger wish to see you, sir. Mr. Balsquith told me to tell you.
They've come about the vote. I don't know whether it's them that want it or them that doesn't want it. Anyhow, they're all alike when they get into a state about it.
Is Mr. Balsquith not with them?
No, sir. I couldn't stand Mrs. Banger, I expect. Fair caution she is. I couldn't help laughing when I saw him up it.
How dare you indulge in this unseemly mirth in the presence of your commanding officer? Have you no sense of a soldier's duty?
I'm afraid I shan't ever get the hang of it, sir. You see, my father was a tidy little barber's had a tidy little barber's business down off Shoreditch, and I was brought up to be chatty and easy like with everybody. I tell you, when I drew the number in the conscription, it gave my old mother the needle and it gave me the ump. I should take it very kind, sir, if you'd let me off the drill and let me shave you instead. You'd appreciate my qualities then. You would indeed, sir. I shan't never do myself justice at soldiering, sir. I can't bring myself to think of it as proper work for a man with an active mind. So you might say, sir, off of it's only housemaiden and the other off is dressing up in make-believe.
Tough, sir. It's the easiest life in the world. Once you learn your drill, all you have to do is hold your tongue and obey your orders.
But I do assure you, sir, oft the time they're the wrong orders, and I get my trouble when I obey them. The sergeant's orders is all right, but the officers don't know what they're talking about. Why the horses knows better sometimes. Fours, says Lieutenant Trevor at the gate of Buckingham Palace. Only this morning, when we was on duty at by a state visit to the coal trout, I was fourth man, like in the first file, and when I started, the horses all back, and the sergeant was at me straight. Threes, you ballyfool, he whispers, and he was on me again about it when we came back and called me a fathead. He did. What am I to do? I says. The lieutenant's orders was fours. I says. I'll show you how, Lieutenant here. He says. In future, you attend to my orders and not to his. He says. What does he know about it? You didn't give me any orders. I says. Couldn't you see for yourself? They wasn't. Room for fours, he says. Why can't you think? General Michener tells me I'm not to think, but to obey orders, I says. Is Michener your sergeant, or am I? He says, in his bullying way. You are, I says. Well, he says, you've got to do what your sergeant tells you. That's discipline, he says. Well, what am I to do, General? I says. You're to let me talk, he says. That's what he's for.
It is impossible for the human mind to conceive anything more dreadful than this. You're a disgrace to the service.
The service is a disgrace to me. When my mother's people pass me in the street with the uniform on, I hardly know which way to look. There never was a soldier in my family before.
There was never anything else in mine, sir.
My mother's second cousin was one of the Parkinsons of Stepney. What do you know of the feeling of a respectable family in the middle station of life? I can't bear to be looked down on as a common soldier. Why can't my father be let by my discharge? You've done away with the soldier's right to have his discharge bought by him by his relations. The country didn't know you were going to do that, or never would have stood it. Is an Englishman to be made a mockery like this?
Attention! Right about face, march!
Oh, that I should have lived to be spake to as if I was the lowest of the low. Me, that is shaved a city of London alderman's wife with me own hand.
Poltroon, cry baby. Well, better disgrace yourself here than disgrace your country on the field of battle.
Who's going to disgrace his country on the field of battle? It's not fighting I object to, it's soldiering. Show me a German and I'll have a go at him as fast as you or any man. But to have my time wasted like this, and be stuck in a sentry box at a street corner for an ornament to be stared at and to be told, right about face, not, as if I were as one man to another. That ain't pluck. That ain't fighting. That ain't patriotism. It's being made a blooming sheep of.
A sheep has many valuable military qualities. Emulate them. Don't disparage them.
Oh, what's the good of talking to you? If I wasn't a poor soldier, I could patch your head for 50 shillings for a month. But because you're my commanding officer, you deprive me of my right to a magistrate and make a compliment of giving me 2 years instead of shooting me. Why can't you take your chance the same as any civilian does?
I searched the pages of history in vain for a parallel to such a speech made by a private to a general. But for the coherence of your remarks, I should conclude that you were drunk. As it is, you must be mad. You shall be placed under restraint at once. Call the guard.
Oh, call your grandmother. If you take one man off the door, the place will be full of suffragettes before you can wink.
Then arrest yourself, and off with you to the guard room.
What am I to arrest myself for?
That's nothing to you. You have your orders. Obey them. Do you hear? Right about face. March.
How would you feel if you was told to right about face and march as if you was a doormat?
I should feel as if my country had spoken through the voice of my officer. I should feel proud and honored to be able to serve my country by obeying its commands. No thought of self, No vulgar preoccupation with my own petty vanity could touch my mind at such a moment. To me, my officer would be not a mere man. He would be, for the moment, whatever his personal frailties, the incarnation of our national destiny.
What I'm saying to you is the voice of old England, a jolly right more than all this rot that you get out of the books. I'd rather be spoke to by a sergeant than by you. He tells me to go to hell when I challenge him to argue it out like a man. It ain't polite, but it's English. What you say ain't anything at all. You don't act on it yourself. You don't believe in it. You'd punch me in my head if I tried it on you, and serve me right. And look here. Here's another point for you to argue.
No.
Pray, how much longer is the Anti-Suffragette League to be kept waiting?
I'm extremely sorry. You really do not know what I have to put up with. This imbecile, incompetent, unsoldierly disgrace to the uniform should have never been allowed to put on, or to have shown you in 15 minutes ago.
All I said was...
about face next. I come out of the room, you instant, you fool, or I'll put you out.
I don't mind that, sir. It's human. It's English. Why couldn't you have said it before?
Take no notice, I beg. These scenes are of daily occurrence now that we have compulsory service under the command of the halfpenny papers, of the eyepenny pipers. Pray, sit down.
Thank you.
And now, ladies, to what am I indebted?
Let me introduce us. I am Rosa Carmina Banger, Mrs. Banger, organizing secretary of the Anti-Suffragette League. This is Lady Corintha Fanshawe, president of the league. Known in musical circles, I am myself not musical, as the Richmond Park Nightingale, a soprano. I am myself said to be almost a baritone, but I do not profess to understand these distinctions.
Most happy, I'm sure.
We have come to tell you plainly that the anti-suffragettes plan my dear, are going to fight.
Oh, pray, leave that to the men, Mrs. Banger.
We can no longer trust the men.
They have shown neither the strength, the courage, nor the determination which are needed to combat women like the suffragettes.
Nature is too strong for the combatants.
Physical struggles between persons of the opposite sexes are unseemly.
Demoralizing.
Insincere.
They are merely embraces in disguise.
No such suspicion can be attached to combats in which the antagonists are of the same sex.
The anti-suffragettes have resolved to take the field.
They will enforce the order of General Sandstone for the removal of all women from the 2-mile radius. That is, all women, except themselves.
Well, I'm sorry to have to inform you, madam, that the government has given up that project and that General Sandstone has resigned in consequence.
That does not concern us in the least. We approve of the project and will see that it is carried out. We have spent a good deal of money arming ourselves, and we are not going to have that money thrown away through the pusillanimity of a cabinet of males.
Arming yourselves? But, my dear ladies, under the latest proclamation, women are strictly forbidden to carry chains, padlocks, tracts on the franchise, or weapons of any description.
You little know your countrywomen, General Mitchener.
Madam, it is my duty to take possession of that weapon in accordance with the proclamation. Be good enough to put it down.
Is it your duty to take possession of this also?
That, madam, is not a weapon. It is a curiosity. If you would be kind enough to place it in some museum instead of pointing it at my head, I should be obliged to you.
That pistol, sir, was carried at Waterloo by my grandmother.
I presume you mean your grandfather.
You presume unwarrantably.
Mrs. Banger's grandmother commanded a canteen at that celebrated battle.
Who my grandfather was is a point that has never quite been clearly settled. I put my trust not in my ancestors, but in my good sword, which is at my lodgings.
Your sword?
The sword with which I slew 5 Egyptians with my own hand at Kissassen, where I served as a trooper.
Lord bless me. But was your sex never discovered?
It was never even suspected. I had a comrade, a gentleman ranker, whom they called Fanny. They never called me Fanny.
The suffragettes have turned the whole woman movement onto the wrong track. They ask for a vote.
What use is a vote? Men have the vote.
And men are slaves.
What women need is the right to military service. Give me a well-mounted regiment of women with sabers, opposed to a regiment of men with boats. We shall see which will go down before the other. No, we have had enough of these gentle, pretty creatures who merely talk and cross-examine ministers in police courts and go to prison like sheep and suffer and sacrifice themselves. This question must be solved by blood and iron, and was well said by Bismarck, who I have reason to believe was a woman in disguise.
Bismarck a woman?
All the really strong men of history have been disguised women.
My dear lady.
How can you tell? You never knew that the hero of the charge of Kissassen was a woman. Yet she was. It was I, Rosa Carmina Banger. Would Napoleon have been so brutal to women, think you, had he been a man?
Oh, come, really. Surely female rulers have often shown all the feminine weaknesses. Queen Elizabeth, for instance, her vanity, her levity.
Nobody who has studied the history of Queen Elizabeth can doubt for a moment that she was a disguised man.
Isn't she splendid?
This very afternoon, I shall cast off this hampering skirt forever, mount my charger, and with my good saber, lead the anti-suffragettes to victory.
I can't allow anything of the sort, madam. I shall stand no ridiculous nonsense. I'm perfectly determined to put my foot down.
Don't be hysterical, General.
Hysterical?
Do you think we will be stopped by these childish exhibitions of temper? They are useless, and your tears and entreaties, a man's last resource, will avail you just as little. I sweep them away, just as I sweep away your plans for campaign in Germany.
How dare you repeat that infamous slander? If this is the alternative to votes for women, I shall advocate giving every woman in the country 6 votes. Remove that woman and see that she leaves the building at once.
Would you have the feeling art to step out, madam?
You are a soldier. Obey your orders. Put me out. If I got such an order, I should not hesitate.
Would you mind lending me a hand, Governor?
I shall be obliged to shoot you if you stir, General.
When you are ordered to put a person out, you should do it like this.
Ah!
I shall now wait on General Sandstone. If he shows any sign of weakness, he shall share that poor wretch's fate.
Isn't she magnificent?
Thank heaven she's gone. And now, my dear lady, is it necessary to keep that loaded pistol to my nose all through our conversation?
It's not loaded. It's heavy enough, goodness knows, without putting bullets in it.
Ah! Then I am master of the situation. This is loaded.
But since we are not really going to shoot one another, what difference can it possibly make?
True, quite true. I recognize there the practical good sense that has prevented you from falling into the snares of the suffragettes.
The suffragettes, General, are the dupes of dowdies, a really attractive and clever woman.
Yourself, for instance.
Another step and you are a dead man.
My dear lady.
I am not your dear lady. You are not the first man who has concluded that because I am devoted to music, can reach F flat with the greatest facility. Patty never got above E flat. I am marked out as the prey of every libertine. You think I am like the thousands of weak women whom you have ruined.
I solemnly protest.
Oh, I know what you officers are. To you, a woman's honor is nothing, and the idle pleasure of the moment is everything.
This is perfectly ridiculous. I never ruined anyone in my life.
Never? Are you in earnest?
Certainly I'm in earnest. Most indignantly in earnest.
Then you have no temperament. You are not an artist. You have no soul for music.
I've subscribed to the regimental band all my life. I bought 2 sarousaphones for it out of my own pocket. And when I sang Tosti's Goodbye Forever at Knightsbridge in 1880, the whole regiment wept. You are too young to remember that.
Your advances are useless.
Madam, can you not receive an innocent compliment without suspecting me of dishonorable intentions?
Love, real love, makes all intentions honorable. But you could never understand that.
I'll not submit to the vulgar penny novelette notion that an officer is less honorable than a civilian in his relations with women. While I live, I'll raise my voice.
Hush!
What do you mean by tush?
You can't raise your voice above its natural compass. What sort of voice have you?
A tenor? What sort had you?
I have it still. I tell you, I am the highest living soprano. What was your highest note, pray?
B flat, once, in 1879. I was drunk at the time.
Though you may not believe me, I find you are more interesting when you talk about music than when you are endeavoring to betray a woman who has trusted you by remaining alone with you in your apartment.
These repeated insults to a man of a blameless life are as disgraceful to you as they are undeserved by me, Lady Corinthia. Such suspicions invite the conduct they impute. You needn't be alarmed. I'm only going to leave the room.
Fish.
Fish. This is worse than tush. Why fish?
Yes, fish. Cold-blooded fish.
Dash it all, madam, do you want me to make advances to you?
I have not the slightest intention of yielding to them, but to make them would be a tribute to romance. What is life without romance?
I'll tell you.
Stop. No nearer. No vulgar sensuousness. If you must adore at a distance.
This is worse than Mrs. Banger. I shall ask that estimable woman to come back.
Oh, Mrs. Banger, do not for a moment suppose, General Mitchener, that Mrs. Banger represents my views on the suffrage question. Mrs. Banger is a man in petticoats. I am every inch a woman, but I find it convenient to work with her.
Do you find the combination comfortable?
I do not wear combinations, General. They are unwomanly.
I shall go mad. I never for a moment dreamt of alluding to anything of the sort.
There is no need to blush and become self-conscious at the mention of underclothing. You are extremely vulgar, General.
Lady Corinthia, you have my pistol. Will you have the goodness to blow my brains out? I should prefer it to any further effort to follow the gyrations of the weathercock you no doubt call your mind. And if you refuse, then I warn you, you'll not get another word out of me, not if we sit here until doomsday.
I don't want you to talk. I want you to listen. You do not yet understand my views on the question of the suffrage. I must preface my remarks by reminding you that the suffragette movement is essentially a dowdy movement. The suffragettes are not all dowdies, but they are mainly supported by dowdies. Now, I am not a dowdy. Oh, no compliments.
I did not utter a sound.
It is easy to read your thoughts. I am one of those women who are accustomed to rule the world through men. Man is ruled by beauty, by charm. The men who are not have no influence. The Salic law, which forbade women to occupy a throne, is founded on the fact that when a woman is on the throne, the country is ruled by men and therefore ruled badly. Whereas, when a man is on the throne, the country is ruled by women and therefore ruled well. The suffragettes would degrade women from being rulers to being voters, mere politicians, the drudges of the caucus and the polling booth. We should lose our influence completely under such a state of affairs. The New Zealand women have the vote. What is the result? No poet ever makes a New Zealand woman his heroine. One might as well be romantic about New Zealand mutton. Look at the suffragists themselves. The only ones who are popular are the pretty ones, who flirt with mobs as ordinary women flirt with officers.
Then I understand you to hold that the country should be governed by the women after all.
Not by all the women, by certain women. I had almost said by one woman. By the women who have charm, who have artistic talent, who wield the legitimate, a refining influence over the men.
In short, madam, you think that if you give the vote to the man, you give the power to the women who can get around the man.
That is not a very delicate way of putting it, but I suppose that is how you would express what I mean.
Perhaps you've never had any experience of garrison life. If you had, you'd have noticed that the sort of woman who is clever at getting round men is sometimes rather a bad lot.
What do you mean by a bad lot?
I mean a woman who would play the very devil if the other women didn't keep her in pretty strict order. I don't approve of democracy because it's rot, and I'm against giving the vote to women because I'm not accustomed to it, and therefore I'm able to see it with an unprejudiced eye what infernal nonsense it is. But I tell you plainly, Lady Corinthia, that there is one game that I dislike more than either democracy or votes for women, and that is the game of Antony and Cleopatra. If I must be ruled by women, let me have decent women and not, well, the other sort.
You have a coarse mind, General Mitchener.
So has Mrs. Banger. And by George, I prefer Mrs. Banger to you.
Mrs. Banger to me.
I do. You said yourself she was splendid.
You are no true man. You are one of those unsexed creatures who have no joy in life, no sense of beauty, no high notes.
No doubt I am, madam. As a matter of fact, I am not clever at discussing public questions because, as an English gentleman, I was not brought up to use my brains. But occasionally, after a number of remarks, which are perhaps sometimes rather idiotic, I get certain convictions. And thanks to you, I now have got the conviction that this woman question is not a question of lovely and accomplished females, but of dowdies. The average Englishwoman is a dowdy and never has half a chance of becoming anything else. She hasn't any charm, and she has no high notes, except when she's giving her husband a piece of her mind or calling down the street for one of the children.
Oh, disgusting.
Somebody must do the dowdy work, and if we had to choose between pitching all the dowdies into the Thames and pitching all the lovely and accomplished women, the lovely ones would have to go.
And if you had to do without Wagner's music, or do without your breakfast, you would do without Wagner. Right, does that make eggs and bacon more precious than music? Or the butcher and baker better than the poet and philosopher? The scullery may be more necessary to our bare existence than the cathedral. Even humbler apartments might make the same claim. But which is the more essential to the higher life?
Your arguments are so devilishly ingenious that I feel convinced you got them out of some confounded book. Mine, such as they are my own. I imagine it's something like this. There is an old saying that if you take care of the pence, the pounds will take care of themselves. Well, perhaps if we take care of the dowdies and the butchers and the bakers, the beauties and the bigwigs will take care of themselves. Anyhow, I don't want to have things arranged for me by Wagner. I'm not Wagner. How does he know where the shoe pinches me? How do you know where the shoe pinches your washerwoman, you and your high F's in alt? How are you to know when you haven't made her comfortable, unless she has a vote? Do you want her to come and break your windows?
I don't understand that General Mitchener is a Democrat and a suffragette.
Yes! You have converted me! You and Mrs. Banger!
Farewell, creature. Mr. Falsquith, I am going to wait on General Sandstone. He, at least, is an officer and a gentleman.
Commissioner, the game is up.
What do you mean?
The strain is too much for the cabinet. The old liberal and unionist freethinkers declare that if they are defeated and on their resolution to invite tenders from private contractors for carrying on the army and the navy, they will go solid for votes for women and as the only means of restoring the liberties of the country which have been destroyed by compulsory military service.
Infernal impudence.
The Labour Party is taking the same line. They say that men got the Factory Act by hiding behind the women's petticoats and that they will get votes for the army the same way.
Falsquith, we must not yield to clamour. Now, I have just told this lady that I am at last convinced
That the suffragettes must be supported.
no, that the anti-suffragists must be put down at all hazards.
Same thing.
No. For you now tell me that the Labour Party demands votes for women. Now that makes it impossible to give them because it would be yielding to clamour. The one condition on which we can consent to grant anything in this country is that nobody shall presume to want it.
Mitchener, it's no use. You can't have the conveniences of democracy without the occasional inconveniences.
What are its conveniences, I should like to know?
Well, when you tell people that they are the real rulers, they can do what they like. 9 times out of 10, they say, all right, tell us what to do. But it happens. Sometimes they get an idea of their own, and then, of course, you're landed. And I'm not going to shoot them down. It's no use telling me to shoot them down. I'm not going to do it. After all, I don't suppose votes for women will make much difference. It hasn't in the other countries in which it's been tried.
I never supposed it would make much difference. What I can't stand is giving into that Pankhurst a lot. Now, hang it all, Bosworth. It seems only yesterday that we put them in quod for a month. I said at the time that it ought to have been 10 years. If my advice had been taken, this wouldn't have happened. It's a consolation to me that events are proving how thoroughly right I was.
Look here, sir. Mrs. Banger locked the door of General Sandstone's room on the inside, and she's sitting on his head until he signs a proclamation for women to serve in the army.
Well, put your shoulder to the door and burst it open.
It's only in storybooks that door bursts open as easy as that. Besides, I'm only too thankful to have a locked door between me and Mrs. B, and so is all the rest of us.
Cowards! Bosworth, to the rescue!
This is the business of the sergeant at arms rather than of the leader of the house. There's no use in my tackling Mrs. Banger. She would only sit on my head, too.
You take my tip, Mr. Bosworth. Give the women the vote and give the army civil rights and have done with it.
Bosworth, prepare to hear the worst.
Sandstone is no more.
No, on the contrary, he's particularly lively. He has softened Mrs. Banger by a proposal of marriage, in which he appears to be perfectly in earnest. He says he has met his ideal at last, a really soldierly woman. She will sit on his head for the rest of his life. And the British Army is now, to all intents and purposes, commanded by Mrs. Banger. When I remonstrated with Sandstone, she positively shouted, "Right about face march," at me in the most offensive tone. And if she hadn't been a woman, I should have punched her head. I precious nearly punched Sandstone's. The horrors of martial law administered by Mrs. Banger are too terrible to be faced. I demand civil rights for the army.
What-oh, General, what-oh?
Your tongue. Mrs. Farrell! Civil rights don't mean the right to be uncivil. Oh, almost a pun there.
Then your picture's out.
Oh, sorry. Almost a pun there. Mrs. Farrell?
Oh,
I have a private business with Mrs. Farrell. Outside, you infernal blackguard.
Well, I didn't ask to...
Out! Excuse the abruptness of this communication, Mrs. Farrell, but I know only one woman in the country whose practical ability and force of character can maintain her husband in competition with the husband of Mrs. Banger. I have the honor to propose for your hand.
did you mean you want to marry me?
I do.
Oh, thank you. I'd have to work for you just the same, only I shouldn't get any wages for it.
That would be remedied when women get the vote. I've had to promise that.
Mrs. Farrell, you have been charwoman here now since I took up my duties. Have you really never, in your more romantic moments, cast a favorable eye on my person?
I've been too busy casting an unfavorable eye on your clothes and on the litter you make with your papers.
Am I to understand that you refuse me?
Just wait a bit. 3307 Elephant.
I trust you're not ringing for the police, Mrs. Farrell. I assure you I'm perfectly sane.
Ah, is that you, Eliza? I'm not out of bed yet. Go and pull her out by the ears, the lazy streel, and tell her her mother wants to speak to her very particularly about General Mitchener. Don't you be afeard. I know you're sane enough when you're not talking about the Germans. Oh, is that you, Eliza? Do you remember me giving you a clout on the side of the head for telling me that if I only knew how to play my cards, I could marry any general on the staff instead of disgracing you by being a charwoman? Well, I can have General Mitchener without playing any cards at all. What do you think I ought to say? Well, I'm no chicken myself. How old are you?
52.
He says he's 52. Well, she says she puts you down as if in Who's Who as 61.
Damn, who's who?
Well, anyway, I wouldn't let that stand in the way. If I really what? I can't hear you. If I really what? Oh, drop him. I never said a word. Oh, leave him. Ah, don't be a fool, child. She wants to know, do I really love you? It's likely indeed I'd frighten the man off with any such nonsense at my age. What? Ah, well, that's just what I was thinking.
May I ask what you were thinking, Mrs. Farrell? The suspense is awful.
I was thinking that perhaps the Duchess might like her daughter-in-law's mother to be a general's lady better than to be a charwoman. Yeah, wait till you're married yourself, my fine lady. You'll find out that every woman is a charwoman from the day she marries. Ah, then you think I might take him? Oh, clang, you young scald. If I had you here, I'd teach you manners. Now, that's enough now. Back to bed with you, and be thankful I'm not there to put my slipper across you. Oh, the impudence. Bless you, my childer. May you be happy, she says. Give dear old Mitch me love, she says.
Lady Cynthia Fanshawe to speak to you, sir.
General Mitchener, your desires of Mrs. Banger are defeated. She is engaged to General Sandstone. Do you still prefer her to me?
Oh, he's out to the hunt. He's engaged to me.
I'm extremely proud of it, Lady Corinthia.
She suits you exactly. Mr. Mosquith, you at least are not a Philistine.
No, Lady Corinthia, but I am a confirmed bachelor. I don't want a wife, but I want an Egeria.
More shame for you.
Silence, woman. The position and functions of a wife may suit your gross nature, and Egeria is exactly what I desire to be. Can you play accompaniments?
Melodies only, I regret to say, with one finger. But my brother, who's a very obliging fellow, and not unlike me personally, is acquainted with 3 chords with which he manages to accompany most of the comic songs of the day.
I do not sing comic songs. Neither will you when I am your Egeria. Come, I give a musical at home this afternoon. I will allow you to sit at my feet.
Ah, that is my ideal of romantic happiness. It commits me exactly as far as I declare to venture. Thank you.
What price me, General? Won't you celebrate your engagement by doing something for me? Mayn't I be promoted to be a sergeant?
You're too utterly incompetent to discharge the duties of a sergeant. You're only fit to be a lieutenant. I shall recommend you for a commission.
Oh, hooray! The Parkinsons of Sepney will be proud to have me call on them now. I'll go and tell the sergeant to hooray.
Well, you might have the manners to shut the door after you.
Poor wretch. The day after civil rights are conceded to the army, he and Chubbs Jenkinson will be found incapable of maintaining discipline. They will be sacked and replaced by really capable men. Mrs. Farrell, as we are engaged, and I am anxious to do the correct thing in every way, I am quite willing to kiss you if you wish it.
You'd only feel like a fool, and so would I.
You are really the most sensible woman. I've made an extremely wise choice.
You may kiss my hand, if you wish.
I think we had better not commit ourselves too far. Let us change the subject, which threatens to become embarrassing. The moral of this occasion for you, Mitchener, appears to be that you've got to give up treating soldiers if they were schoolboys.
The moral for you, Balsquith, is that you've got to give up treating women as if they were angels.
It's a mercy you found one another out at last. Now that's enough now.
And curtain.
Well, I'm off to the news.
We need to take, let's say, we better say 10 minutes. Make sure everybody else is here. I don't know, has anybody else tried to come in yet? Does anybody know?
I don't know.
Oh dear.
No, it doesn't appear so. Let's see. I don't know who
Oh,
else.
you're there. Good.
Yeah.
Well, I said 2:15. It's just coming on.
When did you get your puppy, Paula?
We got him when he was a little bitty wee baby, and he's going to be 2 in February.
Oh, wow.
So he's still a little puppy. He's my puppy. I'm got to go let him in. He's been crying through this whole thing. I'll be right back.
Okie doke.
What's the matter? He doesn't like fine literature?
Jane, I was able to change your name to Aunt Lizzie for
Thank
you.
you very much.
Yep.
Thank you.
Oh, there it is.
No, John is not here. And so I had him sent into the office by himself, which he did not like.
I bet. How is John? It's been a
John
long time.
He's good. He's good. He's a very active member of Unity, and they had a big Thanksgiving service today. So he's not here. Oh, look who's here, Elena. Hi. Haven't seen you in a long time.
Hi, it's nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
Hi, Elena. I'm Jane.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Oh, it looks like my dog has decided to stay.
Why was he so happy with the reading?
Oh, wait, because John's not here, and I had him in the living room with the door closed, and I'm in the office, and he did not like that.
He was locked in. Okay. The reason I ask is dogs do that. My uncle had a dog that whenever he practiced the piano, the dog would go into the room next to it and lie under a desk and howl.
Oh dear.
Wanted a duet.
I mean, why? Hey, Anna, good to see you.
Must not have liked his technique.
And
well, my dog fortunately likes the piano.
I have a friend who has a dog who's fine in all circumstances, except if from far away somebody goes by on a skateboard or a rollerblade or something.
Oh yeah.
You've seen that too in dogs?
My dog hates
like
that.
skateboards either.
It's loud.
It's loud and it's scary.
This is from far away. They live in a house that's sort of up from the street, up a hill.
Oh.
Down very safely from the front or the back porch, whatever.
Yeah.
And dog just goes nuts. And it's not loud things, bicycles. You know?
Oh gee. Oh.
Maybe it's that inner desire to chase after him and can't get to it.
You know, in my retirement, I'm gonna switch to animal psychology. I think it's much more interesting. I'm gonna find out why dogs do that.
Oh, I know a few dogs I could recommend.
Yeah, and nowadays it's probably more lucrative, to be honest with you. Everybody
Probably is. At least on the Upper West Side it is.
Oh, absolutely.
What do you mean on the Upper West Side?
Sign
Well,
of
we have lots of dogs.
Deborah or
And this was a few years ago when I still had my last dog, Bodwell.
Oh,
And I ran into these two guys who had a really adorable little Yorkie, and Bodwell was a Yorkie. So we were chatting, and it was wintertime, and their dog was wearing a bomber jacket made of real leather, lined with real sheepskin. And I thought, wow, this is nice. And I said, where'd you get that? And they told me it was down the village someplace. And I was down there one day, thought, I'm going to go look at those jackets. Maybe I can get one for my dog. They were $500. My dog did not get one.
I know you see some of the coats and the jackets on these dogs. They're adorable,
Yeah,
but they're expensive nowadays. Yeah.
they are. Well, I have to admit, I got my last dog and I got this dog, a down parka. And the first one I bought, I thought, oh, I'm being stupid. But it was worth every single penny.
what the
Yeah.
dog was? The dog was too cold?
Well, he was a Yorkie, so
Oh,
he had no body mass. He
Yeah.
was little, and he his coat was hair, not fur,
Right.
and he would shiver.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I put that on him when it was cold, and we could be outside for hours. And when we came in, he was warm as toast underneath. It was the best thing I ever bought.
Except for remember, a Yorkie will shake regardless. He could be in the midst of the equator and he's going to shake.
Well, not my Yorkie. My Yorkie was a bruiser. He was 9 pounds.
Wow.
A big boy.
Bodwell? Is that
My
Bodwell?
sis-
You
That
talking
was
about Bodwell?
Bodwell. Yeah,
Yeah.
but Hamish is 19 pounds, so he had to get his own coat.
my sister-in-law put in for that for her Yorkie to be a therapy dog.
Mm.
And I look at them and I'm going, really? The dog shakes more than you do. Who's therapy to who? It's really crazy.
You know, the state of the laws now is such that you're not allowed. I think if you bring an animal into a bar or a restaurant, the staff are not even allowed to ask, to challenge. If you just say that's my therapy animal, that's my support animal, you carte blanche. And it occurred to me, you can do that with any animal now. I could walk into the pub where I live with a fucking tarantula and put it on the counter and say, this is my emotional support spider, and they wouldn't be allowed to challenge me.
Well, they have changed some of it because it used to be that people would bring peacocks and
Right.
unbelievable animals onto the airplane. And now they said,
So has it
cat,
actually changed?
dog, that's it. No more.
Has it actually changed? They changed the laws?
Yeah, they did.
Oh, they did, yeah.
Yeah.
That's
But
fine,
it's
Yeah.
really getting ludicrous, you know. I mean,
Well,
They've gotten much
They
stricter.
actually
too.
brought peacocks into restaurants saying this is my emotional support peacock.
yes, exactly. Yeah. And then
Well,
then
listen, if
the
they have a
peacock would be
peacock,
upset.
clearly they need emotional support.
Yeah, no, they need commitment.
where is Deborah?
What a world.
I know it's crazy.
Better go give her a call or something. I don't know what's going on.
Oh, yeah. Somebody got
Maybe she was expecting somebody to call her.
I don't
Wasn't
think
that what
so.
one of the
Maybe.
I sent everybody, the other two.
All right.
said
I
everybody
see
was-
the dad of the dog is home, so I'm going to take the treats back in the other room.
say hi to John for me.
Don't
It's
start
been a long
without me.
time. We will.
No, I've just got to get Deborah before I can do anything. She's without her, we can't do the reading. Go call her.
Oh, I'm going to change clothes. Different person this time.
Oh, Anna, how's John doing?
He's good. He's working today.
Yeah, you guys still do those readings? I haven't seen any emails in a long time.
We haven't done one in a little bit. I think he's hoping to bring them back. Both of us just kind of had crazy schedules because he was directing and producing a play in August, and then I was in a play in September and October and a film. So we've just been busy.
Wow. A film we can go see?
A short film. So I don't know what they plan on doing with it yet. It's meant to be like a a teaser for like a longer feature. So I don't know if he'll enter it in festivals or if it's just meant for like promotional purposes to get the feature produced.
And what's John directing and where?
That already happened. That was in August, but he was producing and directing. So it was just like very
His vanity,
chaotic.
his project, like his baby that he wanted to. What
It
was
wasn't a play he wrote. It was a play he just felt strongly about producing. It was with a Canadian playwright from the reading series.
Uh-huh. Cool.
Yeah.
Send out, keep me on the list. I would have come seen it.
Bye.
Hi, Deborah.
Believe it or not, I didn't have internet.
Oh, no.
I texted 2 people, but I don't think anybody got my texts.
Hi, Deb.
Hi, I texted Paula and Ben.
Oh, and I had
We were in the
everything
middle
blocked
of it.
off.
But anyway, I'm here. I just have to get my oh, David's calling me.
Yeah.
Oh shit.
Oh, somebody else looked at that one.
David.
Hi,
I
Dave.
didn't have internet and I texted Ben and Paula, but they didn't see my texts. But I have it now. I am, but I got to get my script up now because I had everything all set and then everything got all screwed up. Oh, good. Okay, bye.
Hi, Kate. I'm Jane.
I'm having trouble with mine too, so
Oh, yeah?
yeah, it'll be all right.
Okay, hail, the gang's all here. So let me get things started.
Is everybody, because somebody else said she was having a problem.
I beg your pardon?
Kate.
Was it Kate who said she was having a problem?
Yeah, that was me.
Did-
That was me. Give me 2 seconds.
Yeah.
I-
I mean, fingers crossed that everything works.
Nope. Oh, Ben's there. Okay. Okay. This second play is by a woman named Cecily Hamilton, British authoress,
Great last name.
whose most famous play is Diana of Dobson's. This is a little one-act comedy, again, about women getting the vote. And I will just, we will get started. I'm going to turn off my video and just read you the opening remarks. The scene is a sitting room in Horace Cole's house in Brixton. The room is cheaply furnished in a genteel style. The window looks out on a row of little houses, all of the Cole pattern. The door center leads to a narrow passage communicating at once with the front door. The fireplace has a fancy mantel border, and over it is an overmantel decorated with many photographs and cheap ornaments. The sideboard is right, a small bookcase right, a table left center upstage, and a comfortable armchair by the table. These are the chief articles of furniture. The whole effect is modest and quite unpleasing. The time is late afternoon on a spring day in any year in the future. When the curtain rises, Mrs. Horace Cole is sitting in the comfortable armchair, putting a button on her husband's coat. Her sister Winifred, who is sitting by the fire, when the curtain rises, but gets up almost immediately to leave.
Well, goodbye, Ethel. It's a pity you won't believe me. I wanted to let you and Horace down gently, or I shouldn't be here.
But you're always prophesying these dreadful things, Winnie, and nothing ever happens. Do you remember the day when you tried to invade the House of Commons from submarine boats? Oh, Horace did laugh when he saw in the papers that you'd all been landed on the Hovis Wharf by mistake. By accident on purpose, Horace said. He couldn't stop laughing all the evening. What price your sister Winifred, he said. She asked for a vote and they gave her bread. He kept on, and you can't think how funny he was about it.
Oh, but I can. I know my dear brother-in-law's sense of humor is a strong point. Well, we must hope it will bear the strain that is going to be put on it today. Of course, when his female relations invade his house, all with the same story, I've come to be supported, he may think it's excruciatingly funny. One never knows.
Winnie, you're only teasing me. They would never do such a thing. They must know we have only one spare bedroom, and that's to be for a paying guest when we can afford to furnish it.
The servants' bedroom will be empty. Don't forget that all the domestic servants have joined the League and are going to strike too.
Oh, not ours, Winnie. Martha is simply devoted to me, and poor little Lily couldn't leave. She has no home to go to. She would have to go to the workhouse.
Exactly where she will go. All those women who have no male relatives or are refused help by those they have instructions to go to the relieving officer. The number of female paupers who will pour through the workhouse gates tonight all over England will frighten the guardians into blue fits.
Well, Horace says you'll never frighten the government into giving you the vote.
It's your husband, your dear Horace, and a million other dear Horaces who are going to do the frightening this time. By tomorrow, perhaps before, Horace will be marching to Westminster shouting out votes for women.
Winnie, how absurd you are. You know how often you've tried to convert Horace and failed. Is it likely that he will become a suffragette just because...
Just because? Go on, Ethel.
Well, you know, all this you've been telling me about his relations coming here and asking him to support them. Of course I don't believe it. Agatha, for instance, would never dream of giving up her situation. But if they did come, Horace would just tell them he couldn't keep them. How could he on £4 a week?
How could he? That's the point. He couldn't, of course. That's why he'll want to get rid of them at any cost, even the cost of letting women have the vote. That's why he and the majority of men in this country shouldn't for years have kept alive the foolish superstition that all women are supported by men. For years we have told them it was a delusion, but they could not take our arguments seriously. Their method of answering us was exactly that of the little boy in the street who cries, "Yeah, suffragette," when he sees my ribbon.
I always wish you wouldn't wear it when you come here. Horace does so dislike it. He thinks it unwomanly.
Oh, does he? Tomorrow he may want to borrow it, when he and the others have had their object lesson. They wouldn't listen to argument, so we had to expose their pious fraud about women's place in the world in a very practical and sensible way. At this very minute, working women of every grade in every part of England are ceasing work and going to demand support and the necessities of life from their nearest male relatives, however distant the nearest relative may be. I hope for your sake, Ethel, that Horace's relatives aren't an exacting lot.
Well, there wasn't a word about it in the Daily Mail this morning.
Never mind, the evening papers will make up for it.
What male relative are you going to, Winnie? Uncle Joseph?
Oh, I'm in the fighting line as usual, so our dear uncle will be spared. My work is with the great army of women who have no male belongings of any kind. I shall be busy till midnight, marshalling them to the workhouse. This is perhaps the most important part of the strike. By this, we shall hit men as ratepayers, even when they have escaped us as relatives. Every man, either in a public capacity or a private one, will find himself face to face with the appalling problem of maintaining millions of women in idleness. Will the men take up the burden, do you think? Not they. Good heavens, the strike began ages ago. I must be off. I've wasted too much time here already.
Oh, I had no idea it was so late. I must see about Horace's tea. He may be home any minute.
Poor Horace.
Why poor Horace? I don't think he has anything to complain of.
I feel some pity at this minute for all the men.
Well, what can have happened to Martha?
She's gone, my dear, that's all.
Nonsense. She's been with me ever since I was married, and I pay her very good wages. Where's Martha, Lily?
She's left, Mum.
Left? Well, she never gave me notice.
No, Mum, we wasn't to give no notice, but at 3 o'clock we was to quit.
But what? Don't be a silly little girl. And you mustn't come in here in your hat.
I was just going when you rang. That's what I got me hat on for.
Going? Where? It's not your afternoon out.
I'm going back to the Union. There's dozens of others going with me.
But why?
Miss Christabel, she told us. She says to us, now look here, all of you. You who've got no men to go to on Thursday. You got to go to the Union, she says. And the one who hangs back. She looked at me. She did. Maybe the person who the whole strain of the movement is resting on. The traitor who's sailing under hostile flags, she says. And I says, there won't be me, not much.
Well, Ethel, are you beginning to believe?
Oh, I think it's very unkind. Very wicked. How am I going to get Horace anything to eat with no servants?
Cheer up, my dear. Horace and the others can end the strike when they choose, but they're going to have a jolly bad time first. Goodbye.
Wait. Wait a bit, miss. I'm coming with you.
Oh, no. Oh, Lily. No, please don't go. Or at any rate, bring up the kettle first, and the chops, and the frying pan. Please? Then I think I can manage.
There's no ill feeling. It's an object lesson, that's all.
Oh.
Here you are. It's the best I can do. You see, Mum, I've got to be recognised by the state. I don't think I'm a criminal nor a lunatic, and I oughtn't to be treated as such.
Poor little simpleton. Do you suppose that even if this absurd plan succeeds, you will get a vote?
I may. You never know your luck. But that's not why I'm giving up work. It's so as I shan't stop them as ought to have it. They all strain on me, and I'm going to the Union. So, goodbye, Mum.
And I've always been so kind to you. Oh, you little brute. What will Horace say? It can't be true. Everything looks the same as usual.
Oh, we must have at least 16 dreadnoughts this year.
You can't get him, old chap, unless you expect the blooming colonies to pay for him.
Oh, here's Horace and Gerald Williams with him. Oh, I hope Horace hasn't asked him to tea. You're back early, aren't you, Horry? How do you, Mr. Williams?
How do you do, Mrs. Cole? I just dropped in to fetch a book your husband's promised to lend me.
Had a good day, Horry?
Well, much as usual. Ah, here it is. Where's the wash tub now? Prefaced by Lord Curzon of Kiddleston. Published by the Men's League for Opposing Women's Suffrage. Now, if that doesn't settle your missus, nothing will.
Is Mrs. Williams a suffragette?
Rather, and whenever I say anything, all she can answer is, "You know nothing about it." Thank you, old man. I'll read it to her after tea. It's so long. Goodbye, Mrs. Cole.
Did Mrs. Williams tell you anything this morning before you went to the city?
About votes for women, do you mean? Oh, no. Not allowed at breakfast. In fact, not allowed at all. I tried to stop her going to these meetings where they fill the women's heads with all sorts of rubbish, and she said she'd give 'em up if I'd give up my Fulham matches. So we agreed to disagree. See you tomorrow, old chap. Goodbye, Mrs. Cole.
Might have asked him to stop the tea. You made him very welcome, I don't think.
I'm sorry, but I don't think he'd have stayed if I had asked him.
No, very likely not. But one should always be hospitable. Tea ready?
Not quite, dear. It will be in a minute.
What on earth's this?
Oh, nothing. I only thought I would cook your chop for you up here today, just for fun.
I really think, Ethel, that long as we can afford a servant, it's rather unnecessary.
You know, you're always complaining of Martha's cooking. I thought you would like me to try.
Oh, my dear child, it's very nice of you. But why not cook in the kitchen? I mean, raw meat in the sitting room.
Oh, Horry, don't!
And that's a matter. Here, don't be hysterical. If you knew what it was to come home fagged to death and be worried like this. Look, I'll ring for Martha and tell her to take away these beastly chops. They're getting on my nerves.
Martha's gone!
When? Why? Did you have a row? I suppose you had to give her a month's wages. I can't afford that sort of thing, you know.
It's not you who afford it anyhow. Don't I pay Martha out of my own money?
Do you call it ladylike to throw that in my face?
I'm not throwing it in your face, but as it happens, I didn't pay her anything. She went off without a word. And Lily's gone too.
Well, good riddance. I mean, I'm sick of her dirty face and her slovenly ways. You know, if she ever does clean my boots, she makes them look worse than when I took them off. We must try and get a charwoman.
We shan't be able to, isn't it in the papers?
What are you talking about?
Winifred said it would be in the evening papers.
Winifred? She's been here, has she? Aha, that accounts for everything. How that woman comes to be your sister, I can't imagine. Of course she's mixed up with this wildcat scheme.
Then you know about it.
Yeah, I saw something about suffragettes on strike on the posters on my way home. But who cares if they do strike? I mean, they're no use to anyone. I mean, look at Winifred. I mean, what does she ever do except go around making speeches and kicking up a row outside the House of Commons until she forces the police to arrest her? And then she goes to prison and poses as a martyr. A martyr! We all know she could go home at once if she just promised the magistrate to behave herself. I mean, what they ought to do is try all these hysterical women in camera and sentence them to be ducked privately. They'd soon give up advertising themselves.
Well, Winnie has a splendid answer to that, but I forget what it is. Oh, Horry, was there anything on the posters about the nearest male relative?
Ethel, my dear, you haven't gone dotty, have you? Now, when you've quite done with my chair, thank you.
Winnie said that not only are all the working women going to strike, but they're going to make their nearest male relatives support them.
What?
I thought how dreadful it would be if Agatha came, or that cousin of yours on the stage, whom you won't let me know, or your Aunt Lizzie. Martha and Lily have gone to their male relatives. At least Lily's gone to the workhouse. It's all the same thing. Why shouldn't it be true? Oh, look, Horace, there's a cab with luggage. Oh, what shall we do?
Well, don't fuss. Stopping next door. It's not here at all.
No, it's here.
Come back. You can't open the door yourself. Looks as if we didn't keep a servant.
It is, Agatha, and such a big box. Where can we put it?
How do you do, Horace? Dear Ethel, you're not looking so well as usual. Would you mind paying the cabman 2 shillings, Horace, and helping him with my box? It's rather heavy, but then it contains all my worldly belongings.
Agatha, first of all, your camera's not on. And secondly, you haven't lost your situation, have you? You haven't left the lefties, the Lewises.
Yes, Horace. I left at 3 o'clock.
My dear Agatha, I'm extremely sorry, but we can't put you up here.
Hadn't you better pay the cab? 2 shillings so soon becomes 2 and 6. I'm afraid my brother doesn't realize that I have some claim on him.
We thought you were so happy with the Lewises.
So were the slaves in America when they had kind masters. They didn't want to be free.
Well, Horace said you always had late dinner with them when they had no company.
I've no complaint against my late employers. In fact, I was very sorry to inconvenience them by leaving so suddenly, but I had a higher duty to perform than my duty to them.
I don't know what to do. It will worry Horace dreadfully.
Well, the cab was 2 and 6, and then I had to give the man 2pence to help me in with that Noah's Ark. Now, Agatha, what does this mean? I mean, surely in your position it's very unwise to leave the Lewises. You can't stay here. We must make some arrangement.
Any arrangement you like, dear, provided you support me.
I support you.
As my nearest male relative, I think you are obliged to do so. If you refuse, I must go to the workhouse.
But why can't you support yourself? You've done it for years.
Yes, ever since I was 18. Now I am going to give up work until my work is recognized. Either my proper place is in the home provided for me by some dear father, brother, husband, cousin, or uncle, or I am a self-supporting member of the state who ought not to be shut out from the rights of citizenship.
You know, all this sounds as if you'd become a suffragette. Oh, Agatha, I always thought you was a lady.
Yes, I was a lady. Such a lady that at 18 was thrown upon the world, penniless, with no training whatever which fitted me to earn my own living. When women become citizens, I believe that daughters will be given the same chances as sons, and such a life as mine will be impossible.
You know, women are so illogical. I mean, what on earth has all this to do with your planting yourself on me in this inconsiderate way? You put me in the most unpleasant position. You must see, Agatha, I haven't the means to support a sister and a wife. I mean, couldn't you go to some friends until you find another situation?
No, Horace, I'm going to stay with you.
Oh, indeed. And for how long, if I may ask?
Until the bill for the removal of the sex disability is passed.
Nonsense. I can't keep you, and I won't. I've always tried to do my duty by you, but I hardly think a week passes that I don't write to you. But now that you have deliberately thrown up an excellent situation as a governess and come here and threaten me, I think it's time to say that, sister or no sister, I will be a master in my own house.
How are you, Uncle Horace? Is that Aunt Aggie? How do you do? I haven't seen you since I was a kid.
Well, what have you come for?
There's a charming welcome to give your only niece.
Look, you know perfectly well, Molly, I disapprove of you in every way. Now, I hear, I've never read it, of course, but I hear you have written a most scandalous book. You live in lodgings by yourself, when if you choose, you could afford some really nice and refined boarding house. You have most undesirable acquaintances, and altogether, you
Up, Uncle. Now's your chance of reforming me. I've come to live with you. You can support me and improve me at the same time.
I never heard such impertinence. I have always understood from you that you earn more than I do.
Oh, yes, but you never liked my writing for money, did you? You called me sexless once because I said that as long as I could support myself, I didn't feel an irresistible temptation to marry that awful little bounder Weeks.
Reginald Weeks? How can you call him a bounder? He was at Oxford.
Hello, Auntie Ethel. I didn't notice you. You'll be glad to hear I haven't brought much luggage, only a nightgown and some golf clubs.
I suppose this is a joke.
Well, of course, that's one way of looking at it. I'm not going to support myself any longer. I'm going to be a perfect lady and depend on my Uncle Horace, my nearest male relative, for the necessities of life. Aren't you glad that I'm not going to write another scandalous book or live in lodgings by myself?
Horace, there's someone getting out of a motor. A grand motor. Who can it be? And there's no one to answer the door.
That doesn't matter. I found it open and left it open to save trouble.
She's got luggage, too. The chauffeur's bringing in a dressing case.
Well?
You are Mr. Cole?
No, certainly not. Well, I was this morning, but
Horace Cole, son of John Hay Cole, formerly of Streatham, where he carried on the business of...
I beg your pardon, but my late father's business really has nothing to do with this matter. And a professional man is rather trying to have these things raked up against him. Now, excuse me, do you want that motor to go on?
Oh, it's not my motor any longer, and yes, I do want it to go, for I may be staying here some time. I think you had one sister, Agatha, and one brother, Samuel, now dead. Oh, Samuel was much older than you.
Why don't you answer, Horace? That's perfectly correct. I am Agatha.
How are you? How'd you do?
And Samuel Cole was my father.
I'm very glad to meet you. I didn't know I had such charming relations. Well, Mr. Cole, my father was John Hay Cole's first cousin, so you, I think, are my second cousin and my nearest male relative.
If anyone calls me that again, I shall go mad.
Oh, I'm afraid your aunt quite pleased with the relationship.
You must excuse me, but I don't consider a second cousin actually a relation.
it answers the purpose. I suddenly find myself destitute, and I want you to support me. I am sure you would not like a coal to go to the workhouse.
I don't care a damn where any of them go.
Hori, how can you?
Well, that's frank at any rate. But I am sure, Cousin Horace, that in spite of your manners, your heart's in the right place. You won't refuse me board and lodging until Parliament makes it possible for me to resume my work.
My dear madam, do you realize that my salary is £3.10 a week, and that my house will hardly hold your luggage, much less you?
But then you must agitate. Your female relatives have supported themselves up till now and asked nothing from you. I myself, dear cousin, was, until this morning, running a profitable dressmaking business in Hanover Square. In my public capacity, I am Madame Christine.
I know. I've never been able to afford you.
And do you think, Madam Christine,
Oh, Cousin Susan, please.
do you think that you are justified in coming to a poor clerk and asking him to support you? You could probably turn over my yearly income in a single week. Didn't you come here in your own motor?
At 3 o'clock, that motor became the property of the Women's Social and Political Union. All the rest of my property and all available cash have been divided equally between the National Union and the Women's Freedom League. Money is the sinews of war, you know.
You mean to tell me you've given all your money to the suffragettes? Pity you have an husband. He'd very soon stop you doing such foolish things.
I had a husband once. He liked me to do foolish things, for instance, to support him. After that unfortunate experience, Cousin Horace, you may imagine how glad I am to find a man who really is a man and will support me instead. Oh, by the way, I should so much like some tea. Is the kettle boiling?
There aren't enough cups. Oh, what shall I do?
Never mind, Ethel. I shan't want any. I'm going to dine in town and go to the theatre. I shall hope to find all of you gone when I come back. And if not, I shall send for the police. Well, now, who's this?
Hori?
Who's playing that part?
I think Maudie's coming, but I don't know where she is.
Don't either. Goodness.
Well, how dare she almost come here? Who's assigned that part?
I thought you were going to the theatre, Horace.
No, I'm going to stand right here because I have lines. Playing that part, David. Who did you sign it to?
Anna.
Who?
Anna.
Oh. Anybody got her?
I am so sorry.
Oh, there she is.
So Maudie,
Page
right?
20.
Sorry, we're on 20. The script.
Page 20 at the bottom.
Yeah. Hello. Who's talking about the police? Oh, my dear cousin Ori.
How dare you come here?
Necessity, old dear. If I had a livelier male relative, you may bet I'd have gone to him. But you, Horace, are the only first cousin of this poor orphan. What are you so hurry for?
Oh, let me pass. I'm going to the theatre.
Silly Jay, the theatres are all closed, and the halls too. The actresses have gone on strike, resting indefinitely. I've done my little bit towards that. They won't get any more work out of Maudie Spock, queen of comedians, until the women have got the vote. Ladies and fellow relatives, you'll be pleased to hear the strike's going fine. The big drapers can't open tomorrow. One man can't fill the place of 15 young ladies at once, you see. The duchesses are out in the streets begging people to come in and wash the kids. The city men are trying to get taxi men in to do their typewriting. Every man, like Ori here, has his house full of females. Most of them thought, like Ori, that they'd go to the theatre to escape. But there's not a blessed theatre to go to. Oh, what a song it'll make. A woman's place is the home. I don't think.
Even if this is not a plot against me personally, even if there are other women in London at this minute disgracing their sex.
Dear, stop it. Come off it. If it comes to that, what are you doing? Threatening your womankind with the police and the workhouse.
I was not addressing myself to you.
Why not, Horace? She's your cousin. She needs your protection just as much as we do.
I regard that woman as the skeleton in the cupboard of a respectable family, but that's neither here nor there. I address myself to the more ladylike portion of this gathering, and I say that whatever is going on, the men will know what to do, and will do it with dignity and firmness. Few exhibitions of this kind won't frighten them.
Oh, won't it? I like that. They're being so firm and so dignified that they're running down to the House of Commons like lunatics and blackguarding the government for not having given us the vote before.
Splendid. Have they begun already?
Get a paper, Cousin Horace. I want some. I know some men never believe anything till they see it in the paper.
The boys are shouting out something now. Listen.
Extra special, great strike of women, women strikes, theaters closed, extra special edition, start, new 6:30 edition.
You see? Since this morning, suffragettes have become women.
Here, boy, paper.
Extra special star, men petition the government, votes for women, extra special.
Oh, heavens, here's Aunt Lizzie.
Under the table.
Well, there's all here. That's right. Where's Horace? Out? Just as well, we can talk more freely. I'm sorry I'm late, but animals do so hate a move. It took a long time to make them understand the strike, but I think they will be very comfortable here. You love dogs, don't you, Ethel?
Not Ponto. He always growls at me.
Clever dog. He knows you don't sympathize with the cause.
But I do, Aunt. Only I've always said that as I was happily married, I thought it had very little to do with me.
You've changed your mind about that today, I should think. What a day it's been. We never expected anything would go so smoothly. They say the bills to be rushed through at once. No more broken promises. No more talking out. Deeds, not words at last. Seen the papers? The press are not boycotting us today, my dears. The boy who sold them to me put the money back into Poncho's collection box. That dog must have made £5 for the cause since this morning.
Liar!
Oh, do listen to this. It's too splendid. Women's strike latest. Messrs. Lyons and Company announced that by special arrangement with the War Office, the places of their defaulting waitresses will be filled by the non-commissioned officers and men of the 2nd Battalion Coldstream Guards. Business will be therefore carried on as usual.
What do you think of this? Latest intelligence. It is understood that the naval volunteers have been approached by the authorities with the object of inducing them to act as star women to the House of Commons.
Well, my dear, read then what the Star says.
The queue of women waiting for admission to Westminster Workhouse is already 1.5 miles in length. As the entire police force are occupied in dealing with the men's processions, Lord Esher has been approached with a view to ascertaining if the territorials can be sworn in as special constables.
This is a little bit of all right. Our special representative, on calling upon the Prime Minister with the object of ascertaining his views on the situation, was informed that the right honourable gentleman was unable to receive him, as he was actively engaged in making his bed with the assistance of the boot boy and a Foreign Office messenger.
Always unwilling to receive people. You see, well, he must be feeling sorry now that he never received us. Everyone's putting the blame on him. It's extraordinary how many men, and newspapers too, have suddenly found out what they have always been in favor of women's suffrage. That's a sensible attitude, of course. It would be humiliating for them to confess that it was not until we held a pistol to their heads that they changed their minds. Well, at this minute, I would rather be the man who has been our ally all along than the one who has been our enemy. It's not a popular thing to be an anti anymore. Any man who tries to oppose us today is likely to be slung up to the nearest lamppost.
Oh, Horry! My Horry!
Why, bless the boy. What have you been doing there?
Oh, nothing. I just thought I might be less than away down here, that's all.
You didn't hide when I came in by any chance.
Hide from you? Oh, aren't you always welcome in this house?
Well, I haven't noticed it particularly.
Oh.
And I'm not calling today, you understand. I've come to stay. Well, I won't deny it was a wrench to leave 118A Upper Montague Place, where I've done my best for boarders, old and young, gents and ladies, for 25 years, and no complaints. A home from home, they call it. All my ladies had left before I started out, on the same business as all of us. But what those poor boys will do for their dinner tonight, I don't know. They're a helpless lot. Well, it's all over. I've given up my boarding house, and I depend on you, Horace, to keep me until I am admitted to citizenship. It may take a long time.
It must not take a long time. I shan't allow it. It shall be done at once. Well, you needn't all look so surprised. I know I've been against it, but I didn't realize things. I thought only a few howling dervishes wanted the vote. But when I find that you aren't, fancy a woman of your firmness of character, one who has always been so careful with her money, being declared incapable of voting. I mean, the thing's absurd.
Bravo! Horary's waking up.
If there are a few women here and there who are incapable, mentioning no names, mind, and it doesn't affect the position, well, what's going to be done? Who's going to do it? If this rotten government thinks we're just going to maintain millions of women in idleness because they don't like the idea of my Aunt Lizzie making a scratch on a bit of paper and shoving it into a ballot box once every 5 years, well, this government have reckoned with the men.
Oh, yes.
On what I've got to vote for. What do they expect? You can't all marry. There aren't enough men to go around. And if you're earning your own living and paying taxes, you ought to have a say. It's only fair.
What?
Yes.
I mean, the government are narrow-minded idiots. They talk as if all the women ought to stay home washing and ironing. Well, before a woman has a wash tub, she must have a home to put it in, mustn't she? And who's going to give it to her? I'd like them to tell me that. They expect me to do it.
Yes, dear.
I say if she can do it herself and keep herself, so much the better for everyone. Anyhow, who are the government? They're only representing me and being paid thousands of quid a year by me for carrying out my wishes.
Oh, what-ho?
I like a woman to be a woman. That's the way I was brought up. But if she insists on having a vote, and apparently she does,
No, she does.
She does.
She does.
I don't see why she shouldn't have it. A woman came in here at the last election and tried to wheedle me into voting for a particular candidate. Now, if she's got the time to do that, and I never heard a member say that she ought to be at home washing the baby, I don't see why she hasn't got time to vote. It's never taken up much of my time or interfered with my work. I've only voted once in my life. Well, that's not neither nor there. Anyway, I know what the vote does for me. Gives me status. And that's what you women want, a status.
Yes.
Yes,
Status.
yes, we want status.
Yeah, what I call a locus standi. Now, if I go out and tell these rotten cabinet ministers what I think of them, it's my locus standi.
It's a good word.
And that will force them to listen to me. Oh, I know. And by gum, I'll give them a bit of my mind, huh? They shall hear a few home truths for once. Gentlemen, I shall say. Well, that won't be true of all of them to start with, but, one must give them the benefit of the doubt. Gentlemen, the men of England are sick and tired of your policy. Who's driven the women of England into this? You. Because you were too stupid to know that they meant business. Because you couldn't read the writing on the wall.
Yeah.
Nothing to you, gentlemen, that every industry in this country is paralyzed and every Englishman's home has turned into a howling wilderness.
Trot mild, uncle.
A howling wilderness, I repeat. By your refusal to see what's as plain as the nose on your face. But I would have you know, gentlemen, that it is something to us. We aren't slaves. We never will be slaves.
Never, never.
And we insist on reform. Gentlemen, conditions have changed. Women have to work. Don't men encourage them to work and fight them to work?
Make them work.
Yeah. And women are placed in the battle of life on the same terms as we are, short of one thing, the locus standi of a vote.
Good old locus standi.
If you aren't going to give it to them, gentlemen, and if they won't go back to their occupations without it, we ask you, how are we going to live? Who's going to support them? Perhaps you're thinking of giving them all old age pensions and asking the government to pay the piper. The country will see you damned first, if, gentlemen, you're part of the expression. It's dawning upon us all that the women would never have taken such a step as this if they hadn't been the victims of gross injustice.
Never.
And why shouldn't they have a voice in the laws which regulate the price of food and clothes? Don't they pay for their food and
For
clothes?
mine all my life.
Yeah. And why shouldn't they have a voice in the rate of wages and the hours of labor in certain industries? Aren't they working in those industries? If you had a particle of common sense or decent feeling, gentlemen, you'd know.
Cole, come on, you'll be late. The procession's forming up at the town hall. There's no time to lose. What are you slacking here for? Perhaps this isn't enough to this isn't good enough for you. I've got 12 of them in my drawing room. We shall be late for the procession if we don't start at once. Hurry up, come on. Votes for women. Where's your banner? Where's your badge? Down with the government. Rule Britannia. Votes for women. Do you want to support a dozen women for the rest of your life or don't you? Every man is Brixton is going into Westminster. Borrow a ribbon and come along. Hurry up now. Hooray. Votes for women. Rule Britannia. Women never shall be slaves. Votes for women.
Votes for women.
My hero!
You may depend on me, all of you, to see justice done. Would you want a thing done? Get a man to do it. Votes for women! Votes for women! Votes for women, yes. All women agree, march on. We'll return in time for scones and tea.
Curtain. Oh, thanks, everybody.
I was actually going to vote for women. There it is. Votes for women. All women agree. March on. We'll return. And we'll all return in time for scones and tea. I had something like that planned out.
Well done. Yes, bravo. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Yet another series of gems of roles David gives me.
Yeah, David.
If David ran a studio, I'd be the happiest guy in the world. A big movie studio.
Yeah.
Any observations you want to share before we end the live stream, or?
No, I don't think so.
Yes, did you all hear my Freudian slip? I called it, Lewis's, I called them lefties.
Oh, yeah. Appropriate at the time.
Basically the same, but